I'm gonna have to do that again because that inguinal canal that permits the ductus deferens or vas deferens actually goes through the body wall there. And so the doctor, when they're checking males for an inguinal hernia or the possibility of that, are checking to see how tight that is. The reason you cough, the male coughs, is to put a little bit of downward pressure on the intestinal tract to potentially open that up just a little bit. Because what happens when you get that kind of hernia, it's part of the intestine actually literally gets kind of pinched out through that inguinal canal, and I can only imagine how painful that must be to have that make its way through that opening that's not intended to allow passage of the intestinal tract. Yeah. So we've got some epididymis, which is both a head and a tail portion to the epididymis. From the tail portion of the epididymis is where the spermatic cord, which includes both the vessels and the ductus deferens or vas deferens, which again comes back up through the body wall, through the inguinal canal. And then I think the only thing we haven't looked for on this, and if this is the one that I think we may not have really obvious, I think this is what's left of the celiac artery here. That's the first one that's going to come off of the aorta in the abdominal cavity, and then this other one that's still not clean, super clean, but is visible here is the cranial mesenteric artery, which you can see is providing blood to some branches that ultimately go to the stomach and the liver and the spleen, technically.
So the celiac and the cranial mesentery are usually right next to each other like that?
Yeah, it's usually a fairly short distance, less than a centimeter, between the celiac, which is the first branch off of the abdominal aorta, and the cranial mesenteric. And then, of course, quite a bit further down, very close to where the iliac arteries is, where you're going to find the caudal mesenteric. And, of course, caudal refers to tail, and cranial refers to the head, towards the head. We didn't do muscles.
Yeah, but I think I've figured that out.
Okay, so these have fibers that are running roughly at that angle, and so that's going to be the external oblique or external abdominal oblique. And I don't see a patch. Oh, there's one. It looks pretty high on this one, so I'm not. So you can somewhat tell that the fibers are running this direction, the opposite direction. So that would be the internal oblique or internal abdominal oblique muscle. I think we also did the pectoralis muscles up here. And if we, again, put the muscles back together like this, you can see this like ribbon over here that represents the rectus abdominis muscles. And then here's the linea alba as the kind of white line that originally separated that. Pretty much where the cut was made was along the linea alba. Anything that I left out that anybody realizes? I probably didn't do absolutely everything.
Where would you find the pharynx?
Pharynx is basically the junction between the nasal passageways and the oral passageways that ultimately lead to either the esophagus or the larynx. So basically it's going to be inside up in here, and if we had one that had the jaw opened up more, I could actually put the pointer there. But if I just put this in from here, where the tip of the pointer is down here is essentially where the pharynx is.
Okay.
And you can see I've actually started to go into the trachea, or at least through the thyroid cartilage of the larynx.
This would be called the
Excuse me.
Cool.
Thank you.
Covered all. That was going to be really helpful.